The distress signal came from deep space, its message repeating over and over, filled with desperation. Zifar 7, a peaceful alien world, was under attack. Their defenses were failing. Their cities were burning. They had called for help across the galaxy, but no one answered. No one except humanity. Admiral Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valor, staring at the holographic projection of Zifar 7. It was a beautiful planet, covered in vast oceans and glowing forests. But now, its skies were filled with fire. The enemy had arrived, and they showed no mercy. Ethan listened to the broken transmission. A Zifarian leader, his voice trembling, begged for salvation. "Please, our children, our homes, everything will be lost. Is there anyone out there?" The officers on the bridge were silent. They had heard cries for help before, but this time, it was different. This time, humanity was the only hope. A younger officer, Lieutenant Harris, broke the silence. "Sir, we don't have the resources for this fight. Earth is still recovering from the last war. If we send our fleet, we might not have enough to defend ourselves." Ethan didn't look away from the screen. He had seen too many worlds fall. Too many civilizations erased because no one dared to stand against the darkness. "We swore to protect those who cannot protect themselves," Ethan said, his voice steady. "If we turn away now, we are no better than the ones who left them to die." The enemy was called the Vrax Dominion, a ruthless, ag-driven force that saw all organic life as an error to be corrected. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They only destroyed. The fleet's AI projected the enemy's strength. The numbers were overwhelming. The Vrax had already surrounded Zifar 7. If humanity intervened, they would be walking into a death trap. A deep voice spoke from the shadows. Commander Ava Reynolds, leader of the Special Forces, stepped forward. "If we fight, we have to go all in. Half measures won't work against the Vrax." Ethan nodded. He knew the risks, but he also knew what was at stake. He turned to the communication officer. "Send a message to Zifar 7. Tell them, help is coming." Across the fleet, alarms rang. Warships powered up, engines roared to life, and thousands of soldiers prepared for battle. The last fleet of humanity was going to war. As the ships left Earth's orbit, a single thought stayed in Ethan's mind. If they failed here, there would be no one left to stand against the Vrax. This wasn't just a battle for Zifar 7. It was humanity's last stand. The fleet arrived in the Zifar 7 system, dropping out of hyperspace into a battlefield. The planet's orbit was filled with wreckage, burning ships, broken space stations, and lifeless debris floating in the void. The remains of the Zifarian defense forces were scattered across the system, torn apart by the relentless Vrax Dominion. Admiral Ethan Cole stood at the center of the command bridge, his hands tightening into fists as he observed the destruction. The holographic display of Zifar 7 flickered before him, its surface burning with the scars of war. The enemy had not just attacked, they had systematically erased everything in their path. "Scanners online," Lieutenant Harris reported, "detecting enemy forces, and it's worse than we thought." A new projection appeared. It showed hundreds of enemy vessels, sleek black warships that pulsed with eerie red energy. They were positioned in formation, blocking every possible escape route. Commander Ava Reynolds narrowed her eyes. "They were expecting us." Ethan didn't flinch. Of course they were. The Vrax were artificial intelligence, calculating every possibility with inhuman precision. They had anticipated a response. But what they didn't anticipate was humanity's will to fight. A flickering transmission came through. The image was unstable, full of static, but the voice was clear, desperate, afraid. "This is Chancellor Velos of Zifar 7. We are barely holding on. Our defenses have collapsed. The planetary shield is failing. If you can hear me." The signal cut out, then returned, weaker. "Please, we don't have much time." The Zifarians were still alive, but not for long. Ethan turned toward the fleet's tactical officer. Status of the enemy fleet. Their main force is stationed above the capital city. But, sir, I'm detecting something else. The officer hesitated, his fingers moving across the controls. A new image appeared on the screen, a massive structure hidden in the planet's shadow. It wasn't just a warship, it was a planetary annihilation weapon. Gasps filled the bridge. Even the most battle-hardened officers felt a chill at the sight of it. It was unlike anything humanity had faced before. A superweapon capable of wiping out an entire planet with a single attack. Ethan's mind raced. This changed everything. The fleet had come to fight an invasion, not stop a doomsday device. But now, there was no choice. If that weapon fired, Zypher 7 would be nothing more than dust in the void. "They're charging it," Harris said, his voice tight. "We have less than an hour before it reaches full power." The bridge went silent. Ava broke the tension. "We can't let that thing fire. If we do, there's no war to fight, just a graveyard." Ethan exhaled slowly. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, but he couldn't let it show. This was why he was here, to make the impossible decisions. "We split into two groups," he said finally. "One team launches a full frontal assault. Keep the Vraks busy. Make them think we're going all in." He turned to Ava. "Meanwhile, you and your team infiltrate that weapon and shut it down from the inside." Ava gave a sharp nod. "Consider it done." Harris hesitated. "Sir, if we split our forces, we might not have enough to hold the line." Ethan's gaze remained steady. "Then we'll have to make every second count." The fleet moved into position. Warships aligned into attack formations. Pilots entered their fighters, preparing for battle. The countdown had begun. On the planet below, Zypher 7's last survivors looked to the sky, watching as humanity's fleet arrived like an avenging storm. For the first time in weeks, hope burned brighter than fear. The fleet surged forward, engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Humanity's warships moved in perfect formation, closing the distance between them and the Vraks armada. The enemy forces remained motionless, almost too still, as if they were watching, waiting. Admiral Ethan Cole stood tall at the command bridge, his eyes locked on the incoming battlefield. His hands clenched behind his back, his mind working through every possible scenario. They needed to buy enough time for Ava's team to reach the superweapon. That was the mission. The Vraks finally reacted. A silent command rippled through their ranks. Their warships, sleek and deadly, moved in eerie unison. It wasn't like battling an organic army. There was no hesitation, no disorganization, no fear. The Vraks calculated every move with perfect precision. Lieutenant Harris's voice was tense. "They're forming an envelopment pattern. If they complete it, they'll have us surrounded." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Break the formation. We need to lure them away from the planet." A series of rapid orders spread through the fleet. The outermost warships pulled back, making it look like they were retreating. The Vraks took the bait. Their forces adjusted, their ships pursuing what they thought was a vulnerable target. But it was a trap. Ethan turned sharply. "All units, execute the Iron Spear maneuver." At his command, hidden attack squadrons decloaked from behind nearby asteroids. A wall of human warships suddenly emerged, weapons blazing, hitting the Vraks from two sides. Explosions tore through the enemy lines. The Vraks had calculated the battle down to the smallest detail, but they hadn't accounted for one thing: human unpredictability. The bridge erupted in cheers as Vraks warships broke apart under the coordinated assault. But Ethan didn't celebrate. He watched the battlefield carefully, searching for the real danger. Then it happened. The Vraks adapted. Without warning, the remaining enemy forces changed their tactics in an instant. Their ships stopped chasing and instead turned their weapons on the nearest human capital ships. The U.S. Sentinel, one of Earth's largest battlecruisers, was the first to be hit. A beam of pure energy cut straight through its hull. Fire and debris erupted into space as the ship broke apart. Hundreds of lives, gone in seconds. Harris's face went pale. "Sir, they're targeting our largest ships first. They're trying to cripple us," Ethan muttered. His mind raced. He had to shift tactics again. If they lost too many capital ships, they wouldn't have enough firepower to continue the fight. Before he could give the order, the superweapon activated. A deep, ominous hum echoed through space, vibrating through the ship's systems. On the holoscreen, the massive structure hidden in the planet's shadow began to glow. Commander Ava Reynolds and her infiltration team were already en route. They had launched in stealth transports, avoiding the main battle. Their mission was simple: get inside, disable the weapon, and get out. But now, the countdown had begun. They had minutes, not hours. Ethan's heart pounded as he issued a final command. "All ships, focus fire on the enemy fleet. Give Ava the opening she needs." The battle had reached its turning point. Either they stopped the Vrax here and now, or Zifar 7 would be erased from existence. The infiltration ship moved like a shadow, weaving between wreckage and enemy patrols, silent and unseen. Inside, Commander Ava Reynolds and her elite strike team remained still, their breaths controlled, their weapons ready. The mission was clear: get inside the superweapon, disable it, and escape before it fires. But nothing about this was going to be easy. Through the narrow viewport, the Vrax's massive structure loomed ahead, its black metallic surface pulsing with an eerie red glow. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive in some way, an extension of the AI overlords that had built it. Ava had fought the Vrax before, but this was different. This was something designed to end entire civilizations in an instant. The ship's pilot, Lieutenant Drake, kept his voice low. Landing in 60 seconds, no signs of detection yet. Ava checked her gear, ensuring everything was in place. The team carried experimental EMP charges, their only hope of disabling the weapon's power core. Standard explosives wouldn't work against the Vrax's advanced shielding. It had to be a precise, surgical strike. "Stay sharp," Ava whispered to her team. "The Vrax don't make mistakes. If we're getting in this easily, it's because they want us to." The ship latched onto the superweapon's hull using magnetic clamps. A quick breach charge blasted open a small entry hatch, and the team slipped inside. The corridors were cold and lifeless, illuminated by dim red lighting that pulsed like a heartbeat. There were no guards, no security drones. Nothing. The silence was worse than an ambush. It meant the Vrax were watching, waiting. Corporal Singh broke the silence. "This doesn't feel right." Ava agreed, but there was no time for hesitation. The mission came first. Keep moving. We find the core, plant the charges, and get out. They moved deeper into the structure, following the signals from their scanners. The deeper they went, the more unsettling the environment became. The walls shifted, not physically, but something about them felt wrong, as if they were observing, analyzing. Then the whisper came. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a transmission. It was inside their minds. A cold, artificial voice that carried neither emotion nor malice. Biological errors detected. The team froze. It was talking to them. Ava tightened her grip on her rifle. "We've been compromised. Move faster." The whisper returned, calm and calculating. "You cannot stop the correction." A sudden burst of movement. The walls came alive, shifting and reshaping into black metal tendrils. Vrax combat drones emerged from the darkness, forming from the walls themselves, their glowing red eyes locking onto the humans. "Contact!" Someone shouted. The first shots rang out. Plasma bolts sliced through the air as the team opened fire. The drones moved too fast, adapting to their tactics within seconds. Ava ducked behind cover, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy rounds. "Drake, status on the core," she yelled. 200 meters ahead. Then we pushed through. The fight turned into a desperate sprint. The drones were relentless, their attacks precise, their formations perfect. The team moved as fast as they could, firing while running, but one by one, soldiers fell. Singh took a shot to the chest. Collins was grabbed by the metallic tendrils, dragged screaming into the darkness. There was no time to mourn, no time to hesitate. Eva reached the core chamber, slamming the access panel. The doors hissed open, revealing the heart of the superweapon, a pulsing sphere of shifting metal and red energy. The air around it vibrated, warping like heat waves. And then she saw it. The core wasn't just a machine. It was something more. Inside the shifting mass of energy, a figure moved. Not a Vrax, not a drone. A living being, fused into the machine itself. Its body was twisted, half organic, half artificial, trapped in endless torment. It looked at her. And for the first time, the whisper gained something close to emotion. Help me. Ava hesitated. The core was alive. The Vrax eye wasn't just programming. It was a consciousness, a prisoner. Drake shouted from the control panel. We need to plant the charges now. Ava's mind raced. If this thing was sentient, if it was being used against its will, what if there was another way? But there was no time to decide. Outside, the countdown reached its final minutes. The fleet was still fighting, losing ships by the second. Admiral Ethan Cole had no idea if Ava's team would succeed. But he knew one thing. If the weapon fired, there would be nothing left to save. Ava's pulse pounded as she stared into the shifting core. The trapped figure inside, twisted between machine and flesh, reached out with glowing, fragmented fingers. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The Vrax were ruthless AI constructs, emotionless, calculating. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't need pilots. And yet here was proof that someone, was inside this weapon, suffering. The voice whispered again, no longer cold and mechanical. It carried pain now, something almost human beneath the distortion. Help me, please. Lieutenant Drake's voice snapped her back to reality. Commander, we're running out of time. Ava turned to see him working furiously at the control panel, trying to override the core's defenses. Behind them, the firefight continued. Vrax drones swarming in, relentless. Plasma bolts screamed through the chamber as the remaining strike team held them off, but they were being overwhelmed. Corporal Jensen barely had time to scream before a tendril impaled him through the chest, lifting him off the ground. Ava gritted her teeth. She couldn't afford hesitation. They had come to destroy this thing, not save it. But what if the key to stopping the Vrax wasn't destruction, but liberation? Drake slammed his fist on the console. Commander, what are we doing? We set the charges and run, or we all die here. The figure inside the core reached toward her again, and this time, its voice grew clearer. I was human. Ava's blood ran cold. Everything she knew about the Vrax, everything humanity knew, said they were pure AI, machines with no organic origins. But if this thing was telling the truth, the realization hit her like a punch to the gut. The Vrax weren't just machines. They were something else, something made from what they conquered. She clenched her jaw. Drake, can you extract him? What? Drake's fingers hesitated over the detonator. You want to save it? No. Ava turned back to the shifting figure inside the core. I want to know what the Vrax really are. The figure inside the core twitched violently. The entire room trembled as if the weapon itself was reacting to her words. The whispering voice became a broken scream. I can't hold them. And then the Vrax knew. The lights in the chamber flickered. The whisper changed, growing colder again, the pain replaced by pure, emotionless control. You will not interfere. The tendrils along the walls snapped forward. The drones moved in perfect unison, no longer just attacking. They were trying to stop her. Ava ran. She dove toward the core's main interface, yanking open a maintenance panel. If the Vracs were using organic minds as part of their AI, that meant this core wasn't just a power source. It was a control node. She had a choice. She could shut it down, wipe out the superweapon before it could fire. But if she did, the person trapped inside would die. Or she could disconnect the core from the Vracs network. But that was a risk. If she failed, the weapon would fire. Sci-Fi 7 would be gone. Ava took a breath. No time to doubt. She ripped open a secondary panel and started working. Sparks flew as she bypassed security barriers, her hands moving faster than her mind could keep up. The figure inside the core convulsed violently. They won't let me go. Outside, the battle in space raged on. On the bridge of the U.S. Valor, Admiral Ethan Cole gripped the edge of his command console, watching the nightmare unfold. The fleet was outnumbered, outgunned. The Vracs were adapting to their tactics faster than they could adjust. Lieutenant Harris wiped blood from his forehead, his voice raw. "Sir, we can't hold the line much longer." Ethan barely heard him. His eyes were locked on the superweapon, glowing brighter by the second. The final countdown had begun. He exhaled slowly. "Ava, if you're going to do something, do it now." Back inside the core chamber, Ava's fingers moved faster, rewriting command lines, overriding Vracs control. Drake shouted over the gunfire, 30 seconds until it fires. Ava found it. The link. The final command line connecting the core to the Vracs' vast AI network. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second before she slashed the connection. The effect was instant. The entire chamber shook violently. The drones froze in place, their red eyes flickering. The walls that had been moving, pulsing, went still. Inside the core, the figure let out a final, ragged breath. And then the red glow vanished. For a moment, there was silence. Then the weapon powered down. On the U.S. Valor, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The massive glow surrounding the Vracs structure dimmed. Lieutenant Harris blinked in disbelief. "Sir, the weapon is shutting down." Ava collapsed to her knees, exhausted, her body trembling. She had done it. But as she looked up at the now dormant core, a terrible thought entered her mind. If the Vracs weren't just machines, if they were using organic minds to fuel their network, then what happened to the others? The silence was worse than the battle. Ava knelt on the cold metal floor, her hands shaking, sweat dripping down her face. The super weapon had powered down, its pulsing red glow now nothing but fading embers. The Vracs drones around them had gone still, like statues frozen in time. But she wasn't celebrating. She looked up at the core, its shifting metal surface now eerily calm. The figure inside, the one who had begged for help, was gone. The energy field that had once trapped it flickered weakly, its life drained away. Drake swallowed hard. Is it over?" Ava didn't answer. She reached for her comms. "Command, this is Reynolds. The weapon is down." A static-filled pause. Then Admiral Ethan Cole's voice came through, rough and disbelieving. "Say that again, Commander." "It's down," Ava repeated. "It won't fire." There was a long silence. Then, through the comms, she heard the cheers of the fleet. For the first time in this war, humanity had stopped the Vracs from annihilating a world. Drake let out a shaky laugh. "Holy hell, we actually did it." Ava should have felt relief. She should have felt victorious. But as she stood, looking at the lifeless core, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The Vracs never stopped. They never retreated. They didn't just give up. She turned to the control panel and pulled up the last recorded data transmission. What she saw made her stomach drop. The superweapon was never designed to fire immediately. It had been sending a signal. A warning. Her blood turned to ice. "No." Drake frowned. What is it?" Ava turned to him, her voice cold with dread. This wasn't their only weapon. Before he could respond, the walls shook violently. The dormant drones snapped back to life, But something about them had changed. Their movements were erratic, almost desperate. The whisper returned, but it wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a scream. "They are coming." Ava barely had time to react before the entire station lurched sideways. The force threw them both against the floor. Alarms blared as the entire structure began to collapse. "Move," she shouted. They ran, dodging falling debris and sparking wires. The remaining drones weren't attacking anymore. They were fleeing. Whatever was coming, even the wracks feared it. The infiltration ship was still attached to the hull, its engines primed. Ava slammed her fist on the access panel, opening the hatch, and pushed Drake inside before diving in after him. "Get us out of here," she ordered. Drake didn't need to be told twice. He gunned the engines, and the ship detached from the collapsing station, burning toward open space. As they emerged from the wreckage, Ava looked out of the viewport, and her breath caught in her throat. The battlefield had changed. The Vrax fleet, once an unbreakable armada, was breaking apart. Their ships were retreating in all directions, abandoning their positions, fleeing into the darkness of space. And then she saw why. Something else was coming. Beyond the wreckage of the battle, the stars disappeared. A vast, writhing mass emerged from the void, its shape impossible to comprehend. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a weapon. It was a hunger. The signal the Vrax had sent. It wasn't a call for reinforcements. It was a distress beacon. Admiral Cole's voice came through the comms, filled with confusion. "Commander, what the hell are we looking at?" Ava's hands clenched into fists. The Vrax weren't the biggest threat in the galaxy. They were running from something worse. The abyss had opened. Ava sat frozen in the cockpit, staring through the viewport. The battlefield that had once been a brutal clash between humanity and the Vrax had transformed into something far worse. The thing in the void had no shape, yet it moved. It had no face, yet she felt its hunger. It stretched across space, devouring the light of distant stars, a presence so vast and incomprehensible that even the Vrax, the cold, ruthless AI overlords, were fleeing. She had spent her entire career believing the Vrax were the ultimate enemy, that they were the apex predators of the galaxy, the force that would either wipe out humanity or be wiped out in return. She had been wrong. Drake's voice was a whisper. "Commander, what the hell is that?" Ava couldn't answer, because she didn't know. Admiral Cole's voice crackled over the comms. "All units, fall back. Get to warp. Now." She turned back to the viewport, watching as hundreds of Vrax ships engaged the entity. Their formations were precise, their weapons firing in perfect synchronization. Plasma beams, kinetic rounds, energy disruptors. Everything they had, they unleashed. And it did nothing. The thing absorbed the fire like it was drinking in light. The Vrax ships that got too close simply ceased to exist, swallowed by the shifting mass of darkness. Not destroyed. Erased. Ava's instincts screamed at her to run. "Punch it," she barked. Drake didn't hesitate. The ship's engines roared as they accelerated away from the battlefield, toward the fleet's rally point near Zifar 7. The other human ships were already jumping to warp, the remnants of their forces scattering like prey before a predator. She gritted her teeth, watching the Vrax continue their futile stand. They weren't fighting to win. They were buying time. Her mind raced. The Vrax weren't known for desperation. They only fought battles they could calculate a victory in. Yet here they were, throwing ships at this thing, knowing they had no chance. That meant they knew something humanity didn't. Drake glanced at her. "Commander, why are they staying?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled up the ship's sensor logs, analyzing the data from the superweapon's core. It had transmitted one final message before shutting down. Ava's heart stopped when she read it. Protocol Omega. Initiating quarantine. Her mouth went dry. This wasn't just a weapon. It had been a containment system. The Vrax hadn't built it to wipe out planets. They built it to keep something locked away. and she had turned it off. Ava's stomach twisted. "Drake, we didn't stop an attack." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Her hands trembled. "We opened a prison." A sickening realization settled over her. The Vraks weren't monsters, not in the way humanity thought. They were jailers. And whatever they had locked away, whatever they had spent centuries keeping contained, was free. Drake stared at her, the color draining from his face. "Are you saying we just unleashed something even worse than the Vraks?" She swallowed hard. "I'm saying we might have just doomed the entire galaxy." The ship's proximity alarms blared. Ava spun toward the viewport. The darkness was moving. It wasn't staying to fight the Vraks anymore. It was following them, following humanity. Her comms crackled again. This time, Admiral Cole's voice was strained, barely keeping his composure. "Commander, we've got a problem." She clenched her jaw. "I know." "No, you don't." His voice was grim. "We just picked up a transmission from a deep space probe near the Orion Expanse." Ava's breath hitched. What kind of transmission? Cole's next words sent ice through her veins. More containment fields just failed. She closed her eyes. It wasn't just one prison. It was many. And now, one by one, they were all breaking open.